As parents, we want our kids to come to us, not TikTok, for tough topics. That's why we at Nurtured First built body safety and consent.
Inside this course, you'll get short, real-life scripts for using body terms, practicing consent, teaching your kids a no secrets and only happy surprises rule, and helping kids notice when they have an uh-oh feeling. Everything's broken down by age, from baby, toddler, to early elementary.
Start today at nurturedfirst.com/body safety and use the code ROBOTUNICORN to save 10%. And just for full disclosure, this is our course.
Welcome to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Okay, well, friends. Hi, friends. Scott's here, and you're going to just hear him as the little peanut gallery in the back of this introduction, but thankfully, he's actually not part of this episode today.
Ouch.
I don't know why he chose to still be here, though. Scott is not a part of today's episode. Today, I am talking to someone who I was very, very much looking forward to talking to, who is Dr. Michael Robb. He is the head of research at Common Sense Media, which Scott and I have talked about Common Sense Media on this podcast before. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who's trying to decide what movie you might want to watch with your children, or what TV show, or what game. You can go on there, basically search any child's movie or game, and you can get their rating. We use this resource in our house, and I really love it because you can see, especially for our sensitive daughter, like, is this show going to be scary, right? Is this going to be age appropriate? Is there any themes that we want to look out for? So Common Sense Media is just a fantastic resource, and Dr. Michael Robb is the head of research there. He has spent years studying screens, apps, and digital content and the way that they influence children. And he also talks a lot about how families can navigate screens in a healthy way. And what I really, really loved about my conversation with Dr. Michael is how nuanced he is. He talked about being nuanced and not liking a black and white approach before I ever brought it up. And immediately I knew he was going to be a fantastic fit for the podcast. He talks a lot about what screens actually look like in his home as a father of two kids that are a little bit older than our kids, and gives you some really practical suggestions for how to use screens in a way that is safe in your home. It doesn't feel super black and white, like you have to count down the amount of minutes that they're on screens, and also allows a lot of time for play. I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. Honestly, I absolutely love this conversation, and let's get started.
Am I allowed to say something first? You're not going to see me on the screen because I'm not recording myself.
I knew you were going to want to say something. I said to him,
I'm here, and I wanted to be...
Get in. Just come on in, right beside me here. Oh, I thought we were going to share a mic. I thought that would be cute.
Oh, no, I don't want to...
What do you?
Okay.
For anyone not watching the video, Scott has moved his microphone right beside me here. He's basically like cuddling me.
No.
Okay, anyway, what do you have to say?
Okay. I actually had a conversation with our oldest last night about screens.
Okay.
And she asked about our work. And then she said, Dad, you use a lot of screens for your work. And I thought you said screens are bad.
Ooh.
I said, well, that's not actually what we've said, but I understand why you think that way. And then we went into this whole long conversation about how for work, I mean, the majority of our work is on screens. And it resulted in quite an interesting conversation because it's like screens can actually be really good. They're helpful for work. They make our lives easier and faster and better, but they can also be highly addictive, and certain platforms are designed to draw you in more and keep you consuming more. But anyways, I thought that was an interesting conversation that I had with her just last night.
It's another piece of the nuance, right, that Dr. Michael and I talked about inside of the episode of like, it's not just bad or good, right? Or it's not just never let your kid watch a screen, or it's not just let them watch for 2 hours a day, right? Like the conversation needs to be a lot more nuanced than I think it is. And one of the questions I asked was, should we be all panicked about screens? Like, what do you think about screen time panic? And I loved his response was about how he doesn't love panic and making parents panic. And I don't know, I loved his perspective. It was so good and aligned with how we talk here. And I'm really excited. I think it's a very necessary conversation. And
Great.
Yeah, I can't wait for people to hear from him. And
I'm glad I was able to somehow insert myself into this episode. And you can see me on screen if you're watching on YouTube.
He's quite close. You know, the funny thing is, I said to Scott, I'm like, I'm going to record this intro. You're going to be in the room and you're really not going to say anything. And he's like, no, I won't say anything. But of course, he couldn't hold back.
I said something of great value. So that's why I was a part of it.
Well, thanks for your contribution. And let's get to the real expert here on screens. And let's get to Dr. Michael Robb. Dr. Michael Robb, welcome to Robot Unicorn. We're so glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
I would love to start with just you introducing yourself in your own words and telling us a little bit about what makes you passionate about the work that you're doing.
Sure. So I'm the head of research at Common Sense Media, and I've actually been studying kids in media for about 20 years. And my work started a long time ago when we had a whole different set of concerns about tech and media. So I started off doing work back when baby DVDs were a big thing. And we were doing work studying whether baby DVDs could help or hurt early language development. And now we're trying to understand how things like AI are helping kids' lives. And the thing that keeps me passionate is that I genuinely actually really love media and tech. I use them. I like using them with my own kids. I think that's why I'm interested in just, making sure that kids have healthy and positive tech environments to grow up in.
I love that. And I think this is a great place to start because a lot of times parents, when we talk about screens or social media or TV or even, baby DVDs, I remember when those were very controversial, there's a lot of panic that comes up for parents and families. And I think a lot of times the question is, should it be nothing? Should we not use screens? Am I a bad parent? So can you talk a little bit about, especially right now, I feel like there's a lot of panic around screens. What do you feel about the current screen time panic that so many parents are facing right now?
Yeah, I don't know that panic really serves anybody well. I completely understand why parents feel anxious about screen time. Like, it is everywhere. And I think if you were to just kind of read just the headlines in the news, like, it often makes it seem like screens are, they're ruining childhood. It's bad for so many reasons. But I think the reality is, when you look at the research, that screens themselves aren't inherently good or bad. And I know this is, maybe the nuanced take that not everybody wants to hear, but what really matters is how kids are using them, when they're using them, who they're using them with, and whether they're crowding out other important things that we know are important for kids' lives. Look, I'm not anti-screen at all, right? I try not to have panic in my life. And in my own family, we love watching TV together at night. It's a great way to unwind and laugh together. And if that means there's going to be an extra hour of screen time on top of whatever else the kids did during the day, I'm trying not to sweat that. What I do care about is that the kids are still doing the things that I know that they need to do to be healthy and to do the things that I know are important for development.
Beautiful. I love that. Something that we talk about a lot on the show is nuance. And a lot of our episodes, we're like, you're not going to like what we have to say, but there's actually nuance here and there's gray area. And I think that's harder to find in the parenting space right now. There's a lot of fear mongering. There is a lot of panic. I'm like you. I also don't like to live with panic in my life. We also like using screens with our kids. And I think, the bigger question is, do we have room for these other things in our children's life as well that are really important? So what's one thing that you wish parents would stop worrying about, that you see parents are really stressed about, and maybe one thing that we should pay more attention to?
Well, just going off that first question, I think I wish parents would stop worrying so much about the total number of minutes that their kids are on screens. Right? Life is very busy, and not every hour of screen time is equal, right? So, some of it could be for a family movie night or TV night. Some of it's FaceTiming grandparents or somebody who's elsewhere. Some of it's like learning something new on YouTube, or some of it's just watching something stupid on YouTube together that you can laugh at. So in our house, we might have, like I said, a long day where the kids get more screen time than I'd ideally planned. But if they've laughed, if they've done their homework, if they spent some time reading before bed, if they went outside a little bit, gotten enough sleep, then I don't see it as a problem. I actually kind of think we need to flip the lens a little bit so that you start worrying more about the things that we know are good for child development before we start worrying about all the things that are worrisome about screen use. Because if you can check off a lot of boxes, I know my kid is doing okay in school, and I know he's doing his homework, and I know that he's going outside sometimes and getting, physical activity and getting enough sleep at night, then, whether they have the exact right amount of screen time or not, then it doesn't matter quite as much.
Yeah, Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think so many parents are, they're worried about that specific number of hours and making sure that their child stays within that. But that's not always realistic on a day to day. And sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. I like to tell parents about how when the pandemic happened, I had a new baby at home, and I'm pretty sure we watched at least one movie every day with my toddler at the time. And I like to say the flip side of that's what helped my mental health, so I could show up as the best mom for my kids outside of that time where we were watching movies together.
Absolutely. And your kids probably actually have some very fond memories of that time as well. It's like, oh, it's a nice like cuddle time. It's a time to be close together. And that's sweet. Like it can be a time for human bonding.
So I love that something that you said was standing out to me is not all screen time is created equal. And I think that that's a big part of the conversation that I've seen kind of missing. Like we're saying screens are bad. There is this kind of panic around screens. But when you say not all screens are created equal, what do you mean by that?
So screen is such a generic term for, something that can have all kinds of different like capabilities, right? It's for watching, it's for playing with others with, it's for being solo, it's for learning, like it could be 100 different things. So, to just lump it all as like, well, my kid had 2 hours of screen time, like that doesn't really capture, quite what's happening with kids. So, I'd like to remind parents that, especially parents who might be worried like, oh my God, my kid is on their Chromebook all day at school and they come back and then they have screen time, like it's too much screen time. And I'm like, yes, but like what they were doing with their Chromebook at school is probably very different than what they are doing at home when they're coming back to like play a video game with a friend. And we shouldn't just lump all of these things together. Like conceptually, like it just doesn't make sense. It's serving different kids' different needs at different times.
Yeah, that makes total sense. To that discussion, Chromebooks at school. I know this wasn't maybe on our list of questions, but now you have me thinking.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Chromebooks at school, screen time at school. I mean, I'm hearing from parents. I'm hearing from both. We have a lot of teachers who listen to the podcast. And one actually of my good friends who's a teacher called me the other day and she was like, Jess, I just feel like all the kids in my class, they have a ton of like handheld devices or screens at home. They're coming to school. I feel like I can't engage them. And I asked one of the parents, like, how can I better engage your son? And she says, well, you have to make your class more like a video game. And she's like, I can't keep up with that, And then on the flip side, I hear from parents and they're saying, my kid's on a Chromebook all day or they're watching lessons on the screen at class. Like I thought school was supposed to be screen-free time. So I know that's not really a question, but more a discussion. Do you have any research or thoughts on, let's start with the Chromebooks at school and the screens at school.
I think a lot of it depends on what the Chromebook is being used for. There should be a general rule of thumb, like, is this something that could be done as effectively without technology? Like, do we actually need the technology in this educational scenario or not? And if the answer is really no, then maybe you don't need the Chromebook. There's probably a lot of assignments and things that are being done that don't require it. But in terms of, it's more efficient for the classroom for, a set of high school kids to be typing their papers into Google Docs and then it gets submitted through Google Classroom and it's easier for the teacher to be able to grade it all that way. Like I'm less concerned about that. I think I'm more concerned about either teachers feeling like they have to use technology because it's being pressed on them by like a school district and they're using it in ways that they're not comfortable with. And so it has like novelty, but doesn't necessarily have any kind of like educational value above and beyond what they would be doing otherwise. I'm concerned about it in early childhood settings where, there really is a displacement effect where we know for like very young kids in preschool and the first couple grades of elementary that they need time in the real world interacting with other people. They need interactions with physical objects and being able to manipulate things with their hands and move their bodies that, screens in schools could displace those things. So if you're not careful and intentional with screen use in schools, like it could be a problem. And I think there are schools out there that, maybe don't have it quite figured out, but there are some who do. And so, for those schools and for those kids in those situations, like I said, I'm trying not to sweat about those kinds of uses. I think there is something to the fact that it's a market, right? Like there are a lot of companies out there who are trying to sell products to go into schools because like there's a lot of kids there and a lot of potential dollars. And so, you might be seeing more pressure to use technology in ways that they really aren't necessary, but because there's a commercial incentive to use it, that it's getting used more widely than maybe it should.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the balance, right? Of like, is this helpful? I totally agree with you. I think teenagers, or even older kids in elementary school typing things so that they can submit it online, like that makes a lot of sense. For me as well as a therapist, my concern is always those younger years as well.
Right.
A big part of my work is always like, well, how much are they playing? How much are they spending time with peers? Is the time that they're spending watching a screen or having a handheld device where they're doing schoolwork, is that replacing time for play? Like, do they still have that? Which sounds like is very aligned with the research that you've done as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can always go back to what we know about child development. There's a handful of years of research about media and technology, and there's 100+ years of research about child development. So we know already what are those things that kids need when they're growing up, especially in early childhood. They need warm, supportive interactions. They need the time to be able to pretend play. They need good sleep. They need safe environments. Or all these things that we can just check off these boxes, and technology does not even need to enter the equation, except for if the technology comes in and starts displacing or replacing or disrupting any of those things. And then you could say, even without the research, I have a sense this probably isn't good for kids.
Exactly. There's a intuitiveness to that as well, right? And I think I completely agree. If we look at child development, what we know from years and years and years of research, kids haven't changed in what they need: relationship, playtime, and they won't. Like, this is what kids have always needed and what they'll continue to need. And I love the way that you frame screens as, this is not the issue. We don't have to have this panic, but we just need to make sure that kids still have the things that they've always needed.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful and hopefully comforting to parents who are feeling really stressed out about how much screen time that they use with their kids. So one of the questions I had asked earlier that I want to come back to is there something that you think we should be more worried about that we're not talking about?
It depends on the age of the kid. I think screen use that feels compulsive rather than intentional is concerning to me. If kids are kind of just scrolling mindlessly or gaming because they feel like they can't stop and not because they're actually enjoying it or getting something out of it, right? And I think that's when you start to see screens start to crowd out the basics like, sleep or relationships or going outside. And that's, when I talk about that, I'm usually talking about social media because that, really heavy passive use, scrolling late at night, constant checking, those are things that are linked with poor sleep. They're linked with higher anxiety, with lower self-esteem. And for teens who are still forming their sense of identity, a lot of that content that they're just kind of scrolling through can amplify a lot of pressures around body image and popularity. So that's, what I think about when I think about older kids. And then kind of what we just talked about for younger kids, I'm concerned when it displaces human time, especially in early childhood. I've seen several surveys recently pointing to, more YouTube use by very young children, even kids under 2. And I feel like maybe there's a sense out there that, there's good stuff. There's stuff for babies even on YouTube. But so much of it is commercial or mindless, or has content that's not appropriate for kids. It has an allure, I think, of feeling educational because it's like colors and shapes and letters, but it's so shallow so much of the time. And I think kind of defaulting to I think this is good for my kids, I'm just going to pass off the device. That does concern me. And also if parents are passing off the device to, soothe children who are upset frequently.
Yeah, let's maybe start in the younger years and then we'll go more into the social media because a lot of people who listen, they do have those young children at home. And I think specifically what you're talking about in terms of using screens to regulate a child and keep them calm. I mean, occasionally is one thing, but all the time as a strategy is another thing. And then the type of content. So yeah, YouTube for a child under 2 is concerning and very young. If a child was, let's say, engaging in some kind of screen time and they're in those younger years, how would you say a healthy way to go about it would look for a parent?
So a healthy way would be to be intentional in what you are using. So is it a show that you've selected, an app that you selected, or even if you didn't know the exact app, maybe there's a company that you're comfortable with. I like to point to PBS Kids. I don't necessarily know every app that they have, but I'm going to feel pretty good that that's a maker that has made something that's good, that has been well thought out for children. So picking something that's developmentally appropriate for a kid at that age, that it's a good match for what that kid is interested in or won't bore them or might be fun for them. And what's the context of that use? So is it just to soothe the child? Like that might not be a great use if you're using it that way all the time. Or is it doing it sometimes? Because like the example I always hear is like someone's got to take a shower or do some cooking. Like that can be fine, especially if that's better than the alternative where you're fighting with your child for 15 minutes and you're trying to get something done. So like those are the kinds of things, like what is the context? What is your child like? What is the content they are viewing? Like kind of seeing where those things interact like can really help you, I think, to hone in on what might be good for your child at that moment. And then also, what are you potentially displacing? Like if you're going to be stopping a more enriching activity to do this, like you're calling them inside or, they're already playing with friends and then you shift them purposefully to something less engaging, like that might not be a great idea.
Yeah. And as a parent, how old are your kids, by the way?
They're 13 and 11.
13 and 11. Okay, great. So we'll talk about your kids' ages because I feel like your kids' ages are kind of the prime age where I'm seeing my clients coming in and we have a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
My kids are a little younger. So my oldest is 8 and then I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And something that I've noticed is I really have to ask myself why I'm turning on, let's say, a show. We love PBS as well. And I feel like that's one of our go-to kind of channels or, I agree. We know that those shows are good. We thrived on Daniel Tiger in the pandemic. And like you talked about earlier, we look back at it with happy memories now. My oldest is 8 and she is like, remember when we watched Daniel Tiger every day for 2 years? I'm like, oh yeah, I do.
And does she remember all the songs from Daniel Tiger? I bet she does.
She sure does, yes. But something that I've had to ask myself is, why am I turning it on right now? Is it because they're being so dysregulated and upset and I just don't want to deal with it? And is it a one-time thing, like we're just having a hard day as a family and we just want to reset? Or is this becoming a pattern? And so I've had moments with even my own kids where I'm like, this show isn't working for us anymore, right? Like maybe the show we were watching that I thought was going to be fine ended up for one of my kids who's more sensitive. She just wanted to watch it all the time and she'd see the TV and start crying and be like, I need to watch this show like at all hours of the day. And so what I always like to tell parents too is tuning in with your own child and kind of seeing how the screens are impacting them personally. It's hard to give a rule of like, this show is no good, like is always no good, right? So the one show my daughter wanted to watch was Gabby's Dollhouse, which is, lots of lights and colors and things change really quick. For 2 of my kids, it was totally fine. They could watch one episode and move on with their day. The other child just became hooked and she talked about it all the time. And if she saw the TV, she started crying. And so those were some little red flags for me that I was like, okay, this isn't working anymore. We have to make a change. Is there any other red flags kind of like that you would say to parents, like, these are some signs that maybe the way you're using screens in your home just isn't working well for your little children?
I mean, what you described is a big one. Like if use of screens is always associated with like really big emotions, especially when it's like ending, your child melts down every time the device or the TV goes away. Like I think that's a pretty good sign that it might be time to recalibrate. I think if it feels like you are just constantly battling screen time, I think everybody is to some extent, but like really in a way that's stressing you out, making your life miserable, making your kids' life miserable. Like that's an indication like, oh, there need to be some really clear expectations and rules so that you're not constantly negotiating. If it's just constantly negotiation like that, that's difficult for a parent and it's difficult for a kid. Like it's helpful for a kid to have structure and expectations about like, this is the time when you will watch this show. You get one of these episodes every other day, every day, whatever it is. But just know like when it comes off, here's the thing that we are going to transition to. And if you show me that you can't turn it off at the end, then the expectation or the consequence is we're just not going to watch it, right? Or we're not going to use that thing. But a kid has to have buy-in. And I would also recommend that parents work out that system with their kids to some extent. Ask them, like, what do you think should happen? What do you think you should do when this is over? Get them to have the buy-in. Because if they have buy-in, if they think that they were the ones who helped to set the rules, it's usually more likely that they will try to adhere to them.
Yeah, I love that. I think creating the family rules together around screen time is so healthy and important for a family and gives a child the sense of choice. One thing just for parents as well, and I'm curious if you've done this in your home, is we've liked to set up little rhythms in our day around when we're watching TV or when we're spending time on a screen. My husband actually collects all old Nintendo gaming systems. And so that's what my kids and him like to do for fun if they're like playing a game. So they'll grab grab, like, he's got all these old DS's, Game Boy Advance, that kind of thing. And they like to play that together. We like that because there's no access to the internet on it. So it works well. But we like to build little rhythms in when they do it. So for example, in our home, Friday night is movie night. And so every Friday night, we pick a movie together, we order in pizza, and we sit on the living room floor and eat it. And it's lovely. After school, they might get a little bit of TV time before dinner, and then that's it for after school. Hey friends, so at pickup last week, our daughter asked Scott a truly kind of tricky question in front of her younger siblings. Scott was telling me that when he heard a question like this, he used to panic, but this time he had a plan. And he said to our daughter, "Thank you for asking. Let's talk tonight when we've got privacy." And that's a line that he learned straight from our new body safety and consent course at Nurtured First. So this new body safety and consent course is taught by me. So Jess, if you listen to this podcast, you know me. I'm a child therapist and a mom of 3, and I have taught body safety and consent education for years. This course takes all my years of experience teaching this education and gives you calm, age-appropriate language for body parts, consent, and boundaries. You'll learn how to teach your kids that no means no. You'll learn how to teach them to read facial cues. You'll talk about safe and unsafe touch, and you'll even teach them about their uh-oh feeling. There's guidance inside this course for the real life stuff, like tickling that goes too far, and even the difference between a secret and a surprise. We made this course at Nurtured First because research shows that body safety education helps kids speak up sooner, and we want that for our family, for Scott and I, but also for you. So check the course out at nurturedfirst.com/bodysafety, and to save 10%, use the code ROBOTUNICORN. And just full disclosure here, we are the creators of this course, and we're so proud of it. Was there any rhythms or routines or things that you put in place when, or even now, with your children that you found helpful in terms of when they were on a device or watching a screen?
Yeah, we have screen rules in the house. And like I said, I'm not anti-tech. I like it. I just want it to be in balance. And we have different rules for weekdays versus weekends. So because on the weekdays, they have school and they have activities, and the expectation is that they're going to do the other things first. But on the other hand, like I'm cognizant, like, when they get back from school, like, they're beat. They sometimes do need like a little break. So your mileage will vary. You have to do what works for your family. But basically, like, they can have a half an hour every day when they come home from school to like just kind of decompress, whatever. And when that time is up, they can go on to do the other thing. But we have made it very clear that like there are some days where that's just not possible. You won't be able to get that full half hour. And that's okay, because sometimes we'll make it up in other ways, or we'll have a movie night or whatever. Similar to your family, we always have a Friday night pizza and movie, and that has been a really, really helpful and really bonding. Like, I really enjoy that. And on weekends, the kids get more time. They get 2 hours a day to, do whatever it is they want to do. Even that still has some restrictions. I allow my kids some YouTube time, but not unlimited YouTube time. And the other thing they need to do is, like, if they want an app or something, like, they have to clear with me. They can't just download things willy-nilly without my knowledge. And the problem with this, though, is it requires it can require a bit of like effort from parents to try to manage. But I would say the effort that you put in the beginning of just trying to get the system in place pays off in the long run in terms of lack of time that you need to spend later, with fights and screen time disagreements. And I thought I could do this, and why can't I do this? And so, like, any system that you put in place, any routine is going to take some time at the beginning. But the important thing is to try to be consistent with it so that, again, it's just, this is what it is. And so we're not going to keep fighting about it.
Absolutely. I think for the parents of the younger kids listening, this is such a great episode for you to be listening to, and great time to kind of talk about, even with your parenting partner, what that might look like in your house, like what your screen rules are going to be, what the expectations are going to be for your kids, what you're going to feel comfortable with. And like you said, Dr. Michael, starting it off on the right foot is really helpful. Now, for me as a therapist who works a lot with kids, I'd say like 8 to 15, and a lot of them have been on screens already. And they have specifically some of the challenges that I'm seeing in my practice are the boys with gaming. Most of them will come in and I'll say, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? And it's always Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite. Mm-hmm. So that's been a really big theme I've seen in my practice around the boys that I work with, around the girls that I work with, same age group. What do you like to do in your spare time? Snapchat, TikTok. Those are the two main ones that I'm hearing a lot about. And this also could be just where I am, the community where I'm doing my work. But it seems like this is quite common around the world. So I'm curious about the research that you've done on that. Does that feel consistent with what I'm seeing in my practice? And any words of encouragement for parents who have to now step back and be like, I need to get back into this position of leadership because really gaming or social media has taken over my kid's life?
I mean, and we'll kind of keep coming back to the themes that we've talked about a few times earlier on this podcast, but about kind of balance and making sure you're not displacing other more important things. Mm-hmm. Gaming can be positive, right? It can be very social. And I'm sure for a lot of the boys that you see, like, it's part of their friend groups. It can be creative. It can be a means of connection. In our own research, we find, I think, that 3/4 of boys are playing games daily, at least, often for, a good chunk of time. But the key is it's balance and age appropriateness. When my kids were little, when they were in early elementary school, especially my oldest, he really wanted to play Fortnite. And I know, like, I've seen it. I played it a little bit. It's not the most violent game, especially compared to lots of other things out there. But they were young, and I didn't think it was right for that age. And so I said no. And they lived. They're fine. They still play plenty of other video games, like just not that particular one until they got older. So, like, you may have family values that you want to support, and it's okay to say, like, not this one, but this one. So, in other words, like, I'm not comfortable with this. Even if your friends are playing with it, but like, here are a menu of other options that you can use. I think it's also important for parents to realize, like I said, like, if you just say like no gaming, you're trying to cut it back, like you are in some ways cutting off a little bit of a social connection that they have, when they're chatting with, like, it's a subject of conversation at school. So it might not be great to just cut it off entirely unless it really is become so prevalent, or like the kid really seems like it's displacing school. They're doing it so much that it's displacing all these other more important things in their lives. But in general, most kids are not gaming that way, but it should still be part of a balanced diet. So yes, for your kids that you see in your practice, some gaming might be fine if it is displacing school, sleep. It's causing all kinds of like fights and negative interactions in the household. Like, that is a sure sign. Like, it is time to recalibrate, reestablish, like, here are the rules or boundaries, maybe even set some time limits. Time limits with games can be tricky because they're not always perfectly time bound, in the sense that, like, Fortnite, if you're playing a round of Fortnite, like, it might be 20 minutes long, and maybe you're hoping your kid was only going to play for half an hour, but now it's going to bleed for like 40 minutes. But if you do, like, after this round is over, then you will stop. Like, that gives your kid a natural stopping point. So trying to find natural stopping points, I think, can help to alleviate some of the conflicts that arise around gaming.
So much of what you said is so aligned with how I approach parents. It's a lot of it's having some of those boundaries, right? So for the parents I support, it's talking to them about screens in their rooms.
Yep.
When screens, that's being a big one, right? Not having a screen in the bedroom. And then when screens take over sleep, that's something that I'm seeing. Kids are coming in anxious, they're coming in depressed, and they're struggling. But when we look, they're not sleeping because they're up all night playing a game. So simple things like that to create changes that can feel healthy for the family.
Yeah, that's a really good one, in the sense of like, oh, I thought it was the gaming, but it's actually the fact that they're not sleeping well is the thing that is actually driving it. It's being masked by the gaming, perhaps. But that rule is such an important one. And it's like, oh, if I was going to recommend, like, what's one fairly low-hanging fruit for, a parent to take into their homes, if they're not already doing that, is to, no screens at bedtime, keep the screens out of the room, charge your devices elsewhere, and start that. It may be too late for some parents, but if you can start it early, if you're the parent of a young child, start that expectation early and make sure that the expectation around sleep time is probably reading. Like, get that habit going real early, so that just like, okay, yes, at 9 o'clock, everything goes away, it gets plugged in the kitchen. We go upstairs and we do reading time, and that's just what it is. Because you are absolutely right. Like, the lack of sleep associated with screen use is correlated with, a lot of negative outcomes. Anything from anxiety and depression to, poor academic functioning.
Yeah, I think that's such an important one to know. And parents often are like, oh, but their friends are playing late. And I love how casual you are about it. Like, yeah, some things are hard, or I can say yes to a lot of things. I'll give you a menu of all the things I can say yes to, but this isn't something I can say yes to.
Having a menu is always a great option for a kid. I mean, we did that frequently with our children when they were growing up. They were lucky enough to have a parent who worked at Common Sense Media, but like I have also was like just really interested in like what are the TV shows or movies or games that are good. And I knew they weren't going to like all of them, but I was like, well, here are 3 you can choose from or 2 you can choose from. And just having that menu of choice like gives them a little sense of agency that they pick something that they like. And you can still feel good that you have helped them find something of high quality.
Yeah, I love that. And Common Sense Media, again, such a great resource for finding quality shows and games and everything for your children, so you can actually look and see if this is going to be helpful for your child or not. On that note, just one last thing about the games. I have a lot of parents come in very stressed out about their child's desire to play, specifically Roblox. And I'm sure you know, you have children this age too. This is the game that they all want to play. They're often chatting with their friends on there, but there's also a lot of panic for parents around that game specifically. I'm wondering if you have any specific research or advice around that game.
I mean, Roblox is a tricky one because it's user-created games, or you know, there's so many of them. There's like a little bit like a YouTube of games in terms of like your selection. The first thing I would suggest is not to just wave it all off as like something that you just don't want to deal with, because it is a huge game and lots of kids play with it. And there can be positive experiences to be found on Roblox, but I might start by like looking at the settings and turning on privacy and safety settings that are important, making sure their accounts are private, that they can't accept DMs or talk to other people through Roblox, putting on content filters to make sure it's age appropriate. You know, lots of platforms, Roblox and others, have some form of like a supervised account or something that makes it a little stricter for kids. And just taking like a couple minutes to just look through those settings can make you feel a little bit better, at least that the worst harms of Roblox won't necessarily affect your child. But similar to any other game, like what are the rules for Roblox? Like what games are they allowed to play on there? How much are they allowed to play it? And is it causing a meltdown if, like, you know, when you stop, that it just becomes like a really, really stressful situation? You know, if it's not those things, and you know, my family has played Roblox. I have played Roblox with my kids. If you want to connect with your kids, just ask them to give you a Roblox tour. Like, they will gladly spend a good amount of time showing you their favorite games and asking you to play with them. And I cannot guarantee you that every game in there is super high quality. And for my mind, some of them are quite stupid. But it is fun to play with your kid and to have them be excited to show you something to play with. So if you want to grow a garden with your kid, there are a lot worse ways to spend your time, and actually it can be a lot of fun.
Yes, I love that you said that. That's something I suggest to all the parents I work with when they're panicked about their children playing games. I said, we'll play with them together, you know, get them to show you. They would love to show you whatever, with Roblox or Minecraft, whatever it is. They would love to show you what they're up to and what they're doing. And then you have a common language and experience, and you can kind of understand it better. I know for a lot of parents like myself who didn't grow up gaming, you're just like, oh, well, I'm not interested in that. Yeah. But I love to just say, but your child is, and they would love to show you. And then you have an understanding of what they're doing as well. And I think some of the tricky parts for the parents that I support is that they just have no understanding, and they don't know even that there is access to chats or there's access to their friends online. And so getting to know what your child's doing is really helpful.
I think, you know, those are probably the more concerning parts about Roblox is, you know, for the potential access to strangers or interactions with people or situations that a parent would look at, you know, and be horrified by. Because it is possible, there have been like instances where people with nefarious intentions try to reach out to children on Roblox. So you really want to do the best that you can to try to lock down their accounts as much as possible, especially when they're young, so that their ability to talk with strangers is limited. Talking with their friends, my friends, actually my kid they'll start up a FaceTime before they go onto Roblox so they can chat while they're doing it. And I think it's nice. Like, it's, you know, Saturday morning at 8:30, like I'm barely functioning, but they're all having a really robust social time. And to be honest, like I think it's actually better that they're playing together than if he was kind of just by himself doing his own thing, totally isolated and shut off from everybody else.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea of setting up the FaceTime and being able to chat through there too. That's another great solution for parents who are fearful of the chat, specifically on Roblox or the gaming itself. But I think that conversation leads us to the social media conversation. And I mean, in a way, gaming is not social media, but you can have that social connection in terms of chatting with friends on some games. And I always tell parents, make sure that you know who your child's talking to, and make sure you educate your child on how to be safe online. And I think that crosses over to social media and these different platforms that kids are on now. So I'm curious if you have any research or any just thing you'd want to share for parents who have children who are starting to ask for a phone, they're starting to ask for social media. I know we're seeing it at younger and younger ages. How do you speak to parents around that?
Well, I think those are two different questions, whether you're ready for a phone and what you can do on social media. Let me start off with the phone question first.
Sure.
And then we can talk into the social media. Our research shows that age of first ownership of phones is just kind of trending down and down and down. And even by the time kids are 8, I think a quarter of kids by age 8 have their own cell phone, which was an astonishing statistic to me. But I expect that, as there are more old devices that just get passed down, like that number may increase. I have a 13-year-old and he does have a phone that he got last year. And we started with a pretty strict phone agreement that set expectations for when and how it could be used. And even before that, we talked a lot about like, what is it that we need to see before we even consider giving you a phone? And I posted it on the refrigerator so you could see like,
I love it.
Here are the things you need to do before we can get you a phone. By the way, kids are very motivated by this. So like, get ready for them to be like really good rule followers.
Can you give some examples of what he needed to do?
Yeah, some of these are really basic. It's like for us, I was like, oh, can you take care of your belongings? Like if you're constantly leaving stuff at school or like losing things, like I'm not sure a phone is for you yet. Can you already follow the screen time rules that we have in the house? If we're already fighting like constantly about it, like that's not a good sign that it's going to get better with a cell phone. Things like, do you already do your chores and your homework without me having to remind you all the time? A really big one for me was, can you put your device down when somebody is talking to you? And take your headphones down as well. Because, he has an iPad and like I want to make sure that when I'm chatting with him that he's not engrossed in that while he's having a conversation with me, that he knows how to pause it and look up and talk to me. And then in general, like, is this a kid who you think can make good judgments generally? Are they fairly kind and respectful when communicating? Like they're about to enter potentially a world of like a lot of drama. Like, do you think your kid can avoid that digital drama? Or maybe you haven't had enough conversations about how to avoid that digital drama. So it was like that kind of a checklist. And like when I thought like, yeah, you're pretty much doing all these things. Then we got him the phone. When we got him the phone, we're like, okay, now you're going to sign this agreement. We literally made him sign like, these are the rules and expectations. I think what you shouldn't do is just hand over a phone with full access and no expectations because it's much harder to pull back later if problems arise. So, start slow, set a clear agreement on what your kid can and can't do, and then you expand privileges and access slowly as they show responsibility.
That's the best description I've heard so far of how to slowly introduce a phone to your child, because I think there's a lot out there. It's like, don't give them any phone until they're 18, and that's not just maybe realistic for a lot of parents and children as well.
So our child is 13. He got it last year. He was like 12 and a half, and he's almost 14 now. And still he has access to messages and to some games, but there's no social media on his phone. He has not made a compelling reason or case to me why he needs TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. And we've had those conversations a couple of times, but each time like, I just, I don't see why you need this. And eventually it seems like he's given up at the moment. We'll probably circle back to those conversations at some point. But the kind of access he has right now is not prohibiting him from doing the things that I think are important, which are like being able to be connected to his friends and have a calendar and be in contact with his parents.
Yes. And is there any monitoring that you do of his phone? Is that part of the agreement that you have or the contract that you set up together in terms of the messages that he's sending, let's say, to his friends or the conversations that he's having?
Yes, there is monitoring. It is known that we get to know what his password is, and we are allowed to, at random times, unannounced, look through his phone, and he should not do anything on his phone that he would be uncomfortable with a parent or grandparent seeing. I think that's fair, especially with when they're young. It's probably going to be harder to enforce when he's 17. I don't know if I'll still do it when he's 17, but for now, I'm just kind of making sure he's getting into the habits of good use. It's a very powerful device that has access to literally all the information, all the entertainment, all the games, all the pornography, all the everything that a kid could want at a moment's notice. The expectation is, yes, I will get to see that phone from time to time when I need to.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's an important piece. I just want parents to hear. I assume that was your answer, but I want parents to know that too, because I hear a lot from them like, oh, it feels like I'm reading their diary. It feels like an invasion of their privacy. And so I think what you've done in terms of clearly setting that up for your child and that expectation being known versus I'm sneaking behind your back and trying to get in and look. They're very different.
That part of it is probably the most uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm violating privacy or like reading his diary. And sometimes, I'll be scrolling through a chat and it's not stuff I'm necessarily like proud of. There's language being used by the 13-year-old that I'm like, whoa, that's more than I was expecting. But like, if it's not kind of bullying, harassment. It's not something like, oh, they're involved in like drug and alcohol stuff. There's no like talk of like self-harm. Like the things that would really concern me are the things I'm looking for. And I told him that I was like, listen, I don't care like that you guys swear or do, you have like saucier conversations than I'm expecting. I'm looking for things that like make me worried about your well-being.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's the balance, right? Of being 13 and having these conversations and having your parent look and realizing your child's growing up and having, saying words that you didn't know that they quite knew yet. That's also the tricky part of being a parent. But I love how you outline that. I think that's really helpful. I think as a parent of, like I said, my daughter's 8, she knows a lot of people that have a phone already. And that's tricky for her. She knows that that's not happening for her, but I love the idea of like, here's what would need to, and the age and the time. Because for us, we're like, you have no reason to have a phone. You're never somewhere where we're not there. We can't text someone. So it's not at this point a need in her life. But I love the idea of like, here's the things that we'd need to see first, including taking care of belongings, which I like the motivation too. I'm like, at some point that'll be nice to have. So let's talk about, like you mentioned, the difference between a phone and being on social media.
Right.
Social media, that's a big one. A lot of really young kids are on it. We're seeing the damage. I'm curious about your research, your thoughts from your professional opinion.
Like a lot of things, social media is more than one thing, right? I mean, YouTube is primarily video consumption, but it gets lumped together with, Snapchat and other stuff. And, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of all of that, except to mention that like social media use, is by most company standards, is not supposed to be used by kids under the age of 13, even though a lot of kids lie about their age and do get on social media. The potential for exposure to really inappropriate or potentially harmful content is, despite companies' efforts, still pretty regular. It's still pretty, the chance of your kids seeing something like that you would not approve of are pretty high. And it's very, very easy to get pigeonholed by an algorithm into unhealthy content. And, specifically for teen girls, that could mean exposure to stuff that starts off with like, here's a healthy recipe, into now all of a sudden it's a lot of like diet culture stuff, things about exercising and body image, and things that we know are associated with bad outcomes for especially early adolescent girls, roughly between 10 to 14. And for boys, we just did a report about their exposure to what we call digital masculinity content, which is content that's really coded more male, that some of it's innocuous, some of it's not. It could be anything from like stuff about making money and building muscle to girls only want to date certain guys who are rich and handsome, or boys are treated unfairly compared to girls. And that kind of exposure is linked to lower self-esteem, more loneliness, things like that. So there's a lot of content on there that I, as a parent, would be quite concerned about for a child, especially a child under the 13. Now, if your child is already on one of those platforms, like I said, don't panic. Go back to the very beginning of this conversation. Don't panic. Start with curiosity, not punishment. Try to find out, what they like about it, who they follow, how it makes them feel. This is another good time to step in and be like, hey, can you give me a tour of what your social media feed looks like? I'm just interested in like how they like recommend stuff. And, like I said, kids who are sometimes very hesitant to talk, especially boys, but also girls to some extent, are often very happy to talk about technology and may very willingly give you like a tour of like, here's what I see on Instagram and TikTok, and here's why you shouldn't be worried. And maybe you are, maybe you're not worried, but at the very least you can start that conversation. I think at a very bare minimum, parents should turn on privacy and safety settings for any social media account that their kid has already in place. So, making sure their accounts are private, that people, strangers can't DM them, that content filters are on. If there is such a thing as a supervised account, like that is on. And similar to what you mentioned earlier, like no social media or phones, whatever, in the bedroom after bedtime, you can protect, mental health outcomes that way as well.
Yeah, I think those are all great pieces of advice for sure. I think having those boundaries and being the leader of that versus your child just has access to social media. We don't really know what's going on, but we let them download it because all their friends are on it. I think a lot of what you're talking about is being involved and being curious and trying to understand, like, why does this matter to you? Yeah. Why do you want to be on Snapchat? Like, why is that important to you? Help me understand it. Because there is, and you noted this earlier, and we've talked about this on the show before, but that need for belonging from our teens and from our tweens. And for a lot of them, that's why they're so desperate to get on social media.
I think also when you start the conversation, even if your kids are already exposed and looking at things that you're not happy about, the human connection is a bit of a buffer, right? It's a protective factor. So if you can at least have those conversations, even if your kid is also seeing some of these things, not saying it's going to prevent all like the worst effects of negative content on social media, but you're building in a potential buffer or something that will add resilience and an outlet for them to use if they encounter content or experiences online that make them uncomfortable, that are really negative, that are really upsetting. You want to have that channel open as much as possible.
Yeah, having that relationship. And what I always teach to parents too, along that exact same note, is letting them know that you know what potentially could be on there. A lot of times I think kids and this comes to the conversation about porn, which we don't have time to get into today too, but letting them know that you know what that is. And if they ever see something, that makes them uncomfortable, or, pictures of people without clothes on, all of that kind of thing, that that's out there, and you want them to come talk to you so that they see you as someone who does understand those things versus as a parent who's like, oh, they would have no idea that that even exists.
Exactly.
Just a few more questions, but you talked about your child not having social media yet. Is there a time, or is there a strategy, or how will you know that they're ready and that you feel comfortable with them going on?
I would want to first hear like a compelling reason why they needed this thing in the first place. I think if it was like, oh, I can't connect with my friends unless I'm on this thing, then maybe we can have that conversation. But for right now, it's mostly another entertainment source, and they already have enough entertainment sources that I'm not particularly concerned about whether they have this exact one. But yeah, I'd want to be able to see that that we've had this conversation a bunch of times, that they knew how to avoid getting involved in different kinds of drama, like at school or otherwise, that sometimes happen on social media. I'd want them to know that like I would still reserve the right to be able to look through their social media feeds, and that there would still probably be limits on their accounts in terms of what they can see. It's interesting you asked that question. Like, I'm not sure I know exactly when yet. All I know is that my child doesn't need it yet. So I'm riding with that for now.
I love that answer. That's such a real, honest answer, right? Parents always say, well, what age, Jess? What age should I give it to them? And I'm like, I can't give you an age, or like, on this birthday, this is when they should get it. And what I really love about your approach is that it's really empowering to the child. It's like, okay, well, first let's see how you are just with like a TV or a tablet. Let's just see, can you get off? Can you, it's like slowly kind of bringing it in versus just giving them a phone with everything on it and expecting them to regulate themselves on it. So I love your approach. I think it makes a lot of sense. If there was one message around screens, social media, everything that we've just talked about that you really want parents to remember, what would that be? And I know I hate my husband when we do these episodes together. He always asks me, what's the one thing, Jess? And I'm like, I have 5 things every time. But if you can narrow it down to one thing.
So the one thing that parents should remember, I think from just a well-being perspective, like you don't have to get this perfect.
Yeah.
Just try to stay connected. Right? Like if you can kind of remember that, like that's at least a step in the right direction. Even in my house, we have screen disagreements. I don't always win, but I try to be consistent. I try to explain the why, and we keep talking. And I think that matters more than having perfect control. Parental guilt in this situation, I think, isn't useful. But like what matters more is just paying attention and making adjustments. And remembering that tech is just one part of family life, right? So like don't try to be perfect, just be present. That's my general philosophy. That I think a parent should try to take with that.
I love that. I think that's so encouraging to parents who are stressed out about it, just to know there's room for grace and there's room for your kids being mad at you and not loving your boundary or your rule that you make. And there's still room for connection within that. I think that's really beautiful. What's one thing that makes you optimistic about kids and technology in the coming years?
That's a great question. I think they're getting savvier about manipulation to some extent, right? Teams are naming things about what's happening. They talk about doom scrolling. They talk about brain rot. I think that kind of self-awareness.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of self-awareness can actually help you push back a little bit. And the other thing I think that makes me optimistic is like this next generation it's going to build differently, right? The kids who are growing up now are the first to live through this full impact of social media and now AI in childhood. And many of them don't love it and don't like their experiences on it and are thinking like, would I let my kid do this? So they're going to be the designers and the engineers and people who make policy in the future. And I'm optimistic that they will make something better because they lived through something that was worse.
Yes, I love that. I love it. I think we're so hard on this generation of kids and people who are university age, but you think about all they've had to go through with their parents as the guinea pigs for technology as well. And I think that they will make some really beautiful things out of it. And I love that there's optimism there too, because I think a lot of times this discussion just feels really sad and hopeless. And I think the way you discuss it makes it not feel sad and hopeless. Like there's a lot of positive things that can come from using technology within your home, and it's in the way that you do it. Just to wrap up, can you tell me a little bit about Common Sense Media? I mean, I know all about it, but maybe tell the listener what you do and how it helps parents and where they can find Common Sense Media.
Sure. So Common Sense Media we are a nonprofit organization. We are dedicated to helping children thrive in the digital age. We're probably best known for our ratings platform. So if you ever search for Common Sense Media or search for a movie review or a TV review for a kid, you may have come across us, but we have a very well-designed rubric that we use to try to understand what movies and TV shows and games are developmentally appropriate based on what we know from research. So it's something a little more thorough than you might get from other kinds of rating agencies. And we have lots of lists and recommendations about like what's great for a movie night, what's a good game you can feel good about, what are games that are going to be great for like a long car ride, things like that. So if you have any of those questions, you're looking for either a good piece of media to use with your kid, or if you just have questions, like we're a great place to come if you need advice on various kinds of digital dilemmas. So that's what Common Sense is probably best known for. We also have a very robust education platform where we do what's called digital literacy in a lot of schools across the United States. And those are lessons that teachers can do to help kids from K through 12 grow up to be responsible digital citizens, make good choices, be responsible and ethical online.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we can find you. I mean, Common Sense Media is on Instagram, but your website's probably the best place to find you, I would guess. And I recommend Common Sense Media constantly to my clients who are feeling stressed out. And I also don't want people to panic. So I love that you list out, here's what you can watch and here's the games that kids are playing and here's what you need to know about them, right? It's such an incredible resource for parents to really take away the anxiety that comes around having your child on a device or watching a show or playing a game. And so just from a personal note, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's incredible.
You're welcome. We didn't even get into like what are you watching with your kids? What are you playing with your kids? I'm sure your listeners want to know.
Oh my goodness. Well, what do my kids want to watch? This will not be a surprise. They want to watch K-pop Demon Hunters over and over and over. But yeah, so my oldest is very into K-pop Demon Hunters movie right now. I think we've watched it, I don't even know, a lot. It's been the Friday night movie night for the last since it came out. Then the youngest still loves Daniel Tiger. She still loves all the PBS shows, Pinkalicious, Daniel Tiger. I have 3 girls, so we watch a lot of shows that have princesses in them as well. And then, like I said, when they have their time for gaming, really only my oldest is actually interested in it. The 2 younger ones, and this is something, we'll have to have you back, but we didn't really talk about this either, but temperament. So that my 2 younger ones, they're not as interested in it. Like, I'm not really worried about them around technology. They would just rather go play. Like, even if sometimes I'm like, girls, sit and watch a show so mom can make dinner and you cannot destroy the house. You know what I mean? But they just aren't as interested. Whereas my older one, she's very interested. And so she's the one I most kind of have my eyes on in terms of how regulated she is when she gets off or how long she watches it. But yeah, that's what we're watching. How about you? What are you enjoying in your home right now?
We've definitely watched a lot of K-pop Demon Hunters back like at the end of the summer. So my kids are a little bit older, and right now we're watching Parks and Recreation together.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I'm watching Parks and Rec right now, but not with the kids.
That's like our family show right now. It's been fun. Like, I mean, I love the whole PBS Kids era, and I love being able to find like fun things for young kids. And there are a lot of really interesting educational and creative apps and TV shows for young kids. But I'm also appreciating like now they're starting to watch things that I like and that I think that they are ready for and can handle. So I'm quite happy about that. But like for kids, your kids' age, I remember they did all the Disney movies, but then I loved it whenever we watched something that was like a non-Disney movie, like My Neighbor Totoro or like any of those kind of Miyazaki films. The kids responded so differently to those films than they did to kind of the more Disney hyped up, more energetic films, but in great ways. Like, we watched My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service, and I don't know if you ever watched Song of the Sea. There's some really great non-American films out there that kids really enjoy that are very different than I think what they're used to.
I love it. I'm taking a mental note to watch them. You know what? I do find my kids, they don't love the Disney movies as much as we did growing up, but I also feel like maybe because they have so many options. There's some on Apple TV that they really love. I'm trying to remember, but especially with one of my kids who's very sensitive, gets scared very easily. She likes a lot of those kind of slower paced movies that don't have the really scary, creepy bad guy that some of the old Disney movies have. Mm-hmm. Well, this was great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, we didn't even get into AI or, so many other huge topics that I would love to cover. So if you're ever willing, we would love to have you back and talk again. But thank you so, so much. And I hope this was helpful for the listener as well.
Thank you for having me.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are glad that you are here. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and a review. Scott and I actually sit down together and read them all. A 5-star rating helps us share our podcast and get these important messages out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again next time.